Alright guys, today we're doing a valve cover gasket on N55. Okay, 16 mil bolt takes this support out of the way, allows you to get more room here. Again, with this, I always just replace it. You can carefully try to pry each one of those off as you pull the whole item out, but it's always going to fail. I also recommend changing the oil cap at this point. Remove this air tube. There's a post here that just pushes on, so you'll need to loosen this and this, and then there's a screw here that you're going to take out. It's like a plastic style wood screw that screws in that plastic down there. This one can stay tight. This has to come off. It's just I use a little flat screwdriver to lift slightly and pull back. Just be very careful not to break it. And then this too right here breaks every time. I mean, just so I have it listed as a required piece. This car only has 50,000 miles and it just like crumbles trying to accordion it back into shapes. And it's two T25s that hold it on. So you're gonna remove this foam. It has a little pin up here that it hooks onto, so just be careful not to rip it. Also, don't forget to put this cable back in. It's for the mass airflow sensor. Otherwise, you're gonna be looking for a plug and having to undo stuff. And then it goes up under here. And then to get this bar off, to help pull this out, you're gonna have three T25s here. 1, 2, 3. Don't confuse these with another T30 in here holding down the oxygen sensor prong. T25s. And it helps to have like a bit like this so you can reach down between the cables. Next, we're going to remove this cover. As you can see, this just clips over it, so you're going to need to just pull that up and then it just presses back down like that. In order to get to this piece off, you've got a bolt there, then you take this cap off with a large screwdriver. Someone did it with a small one. And then one here straight down, and then there'll be one straight down here, so you need to remove this piece, and it's held on by these little push tabs. You'll just pop out by lifting up on this right here like this. I need to make something like this. Again, it's a T30 long bit and a magnetic bit holder with a long extension. And then you can see right down in there, you gotta find that bad boy, and it's not easy. This is what that piece looks like out. Obviously you've got one bolt in the front, two bolts in the front, but one bolt is missing on this one. In the back you've got, from the top, you got the two that are accessed by those two plugs, and the third one that's accessed over here by taking this trim panel out. All three of the ones on the back have a little plastic washer on the bottom, so after they're loose, don't try to pull them out. Just loosen them until it feels like it's loose from the hole, and then they'll stay with this. And if you drop them down in there, they kind of disappear. Okay, next is going to be your oxygen sensor plugs. It's pretty easy. There's a T30 that goes right in here, and it goes into plastic, so don't over crank it, just get it down snug. Once it feels pretty good by hand or by your snug meter there, don't strip it out. The oxygen sensor plugs are kind of melted into the right shape right there to fall back into close and far, and the same thing with these as well. You're gonna have near and far kind of lined up there. If you're not familiar, it is the lighter gray as the inside or closest to the firewall, and darker gray. Then you're also going to have these little hoses. This one stays on. This one, just grab a pair of like soft needle nose and don't puncture it, and just kind of twist it a little bit and then pull it. Don't put any lateral angular force on this or it'll snap off in there. Just like gently twist it back and forth, and once you feel it kind of start to spin, then you can slide it back. And then this one is easy. It's just a press down thing here. It just goes right here. Alright, cool. Alright, to unplug all the fuel injectors, they're pretty easy. It has a little clip right here, you can see. So you just gotta lift that off with your like little trusty tool. You just stick it right in here. Don't break it, just barely lift it off enough to pull. And then with the other hand, you're gonna pull it out. You can do it with one hand, but just be careful. And then these come off. It's just an 8mm. You only need to take that off. You don't need to take the bolt below it out. And then these, obviously, you've seen these before. You just lift up on this and it ejects it. So you may need a screwdriver to help pry that up, but just be careful you don't break this. Also, when you put this back in, make sure you use your trusty dielectric grease when you have to do the spark plugs next. It's not glued on there. Everything's off of this line. You're going to want to get this out of the way. The way you do it, you can see this right here. You just pull back on this tab and see it's normally clicked in right here. And then yeah. To get this loose, and the other one is this cool little tool from Snap-on. Part number is L Lima Delta Tango Bravo Hotel 53, and you just put that on this piece here, like where the clips you're trying to release are. So you put those around there like that, and then you just have to twist it. See, once you twist it around enough, then it makes this free and pops right off. Love this tool. This one you can take off, squeeze that and pull it up, lay it back. Alright, next you have to take out the fuel rail. I would let the car sit for a good hour or so or more, even to let it cool down, and then take this one off first and just crack it slowly, because again, fuel pressure is going to come out of there. And then with each one of these as well, make sure the exhaust is cool. If you do get any spray, it's not going to go in there. Just be careful with this. Don't be smoking a cigarette while you're doing it. After you do those, just remember it's a low torque, so when you're retightening these, don't torque them too hard. There's this bracket to hold the fuel injectors, but if you do twist too much, you could damage the injector. And again, immediately after pulling the rail, you're going to want to cap those. The fuel pressure sensor, high pressure fuel pressure sensor, is back here, so you're going to want to release it. It's just like a push clip. You just squeeze that right there and pull. So make sure I would push it in first so that it releases pressure from that little lever, then squeeze it, and then pull it off. And it may be difficult. You may need to put one hand squeezing it and one hand pushing it off, but then make sure it clicks back into place. Then the bolts that hold it under down here, you can lift the air box up. They just pop down, and to get in there, you can even take this off and just flop that out of the way. And then to access these little clips, you can see the bolts in there. You just I always just bend them like this and then pull them out. So they're like this, so I always go back and down like that, and that pops out. Pretty easy. All right, next thing you're gonna do is take 4 11mm bolts out of here. Be careful, do them one at a time, because they have a little sleeve in there that helps to hold down the pressure on the rail. Damn it, as one disappears. And space the washer out so it doesn't press on the rail. The fuel rail, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of vibration, so you need these little sleeves. So the way I do is I loosen it all the way till this is free, and then I just put it at an angle and kind of drag it back, and it drags this thing out, and then just very carefully make sure your fingers are on it right away. And then there's 4 of these. All right, now you're gonna need to loosen all the bolts. It's an E10 or external 10, like star, like this. I use a swivel and a 6-inch extension, and you should be able to reach all of them. The ones in the back are a little bit hard. You just wind them out until they feel loose. So just keep going. You can go unlimited amount of time, and they'll stay captured in the valve cover, so don't expect them to come out. Just leave them in there, and if they do come out, make sure you retrieve it, but they should not come out unless something's broken. All right, now that you've got all the bolts loose, you can pull this up. Again, I showed you about taking these 3 rubber tabs off here to pull this line, and gives you more play. You can even press it up there, like that little tab there to hold it up. And then also, I think the trick is this little notch or bolt right here, hole. It lines up best with this little groove right here. You can see it. And then if you just pull this up and let it hit there, it'll help it to come out easier and go back in easier. You just go in with this thing. There's a few tricks. Obviously, make sure everything's completely dry on the surface. On this last one, the other ones can be loose, but I would recommend this one threads on so the gasket doesn't hit it and knock it off, or knock it into here, or knock it somewhere inside the valve cover. Now that you got the valve cover off, make sure you do not turn it over. This thing will catch oil and it'll just pour out of there and go all over your floor. So when you're ready, we're going to flip it over inside of a drain. And then make sure you don't lose any of your bolts. They should be captured and should stay there. And then don't lose this as you're doing your cleaning. All right. Then you're going to change the Vanos actuator seal. It's just 2 E6s. External Torx 6. And it's really cheap. Just replace it. All right, for those 2 bolts, I would not use a lot of torque. Just snug it down. I go to 4.5 Newton meters if you care. Now you need to clean out these grooves. Try to get it as dry as possible. You can use Q-tips and they kind of fit in there. But the first thing I would do is use some brake clean and tip it up on its end in a drain pan and spray all the oil from this direction down while holding it at an incline. And just keep in mind, you're going to be always leaking oil from this oil separator. And then once you spray it all down the bottom, then maybe use a folded up towel or some, plenty of Q-tips to dry it. Once you do that, we're going to put a little bit of dab of silicone in corners just to hold the gasket in place. Now I'll just put the gasket in. Make sure if you just turn it with the rigid side up, lay it down across your valve cover. Just remember all the zeros happen on the same side. And that side is the top side. So the top side of the valve cover. This goes on the top of the engine. It has all the little O's in a row. So just line up your O's with the first one being in the back and you'll be fine. Okay, so the last thing is cleaning it. Obviously, a lot of oil down there to clean. Make sure you clean all the way around it. Also, I use one of these Mighty Vac fluid extractors and then suck the oil out of these little bowls right here, because oil just piles up right there, and if you're wiping it, you'll just constantly be wiping and wiping and wiping. Let's see if we can get some of that oil. Zip tie these PCV hoses back. This is a great way to do it. One zip tie staying horizontal, one tied to this. This way it just stays on the way. You don't need to completely clear your valve cover area, but just so you can slide it back and then begin to drop it. Once it's in place over the back, that's the hard part, then you can use your hand to knock that, to pull that the rest of the way free. Also check these wires to make sure none of these installations are loose and flapping that could get onto your valve gasket service area. Then just push these back if you feel the need to zip tie them, get them out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and once you got everything got it on and you've checked all the way around that the gasket is good, you go ahead and start all these by hand. Just get a few turns on each one. The last thing you want to do is start tightening them down and then start cross threading them, because this thing will flex and bow as these get tighter. So just make sure all of them are started by hand. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take a mirror and just make sure that you can see that the gasket is flush there all the way around. And obviously in these little spots you're not going to see it because it doesn't come out there, but it will on the top side to this hole, so don't be alarmed about that, because that's where the rings were, if you remember. And then you need to go all the way around and then very carefully press this down once you're sure, and just make sure you have a good seat everywhere. And even if you want to feel the back and be like, okay, can I feel that gasket, but make sure you not only feel it but you visually check. And this is where again that that taking this panel off that was right here is such a big deal. Now there's a sequence of tightening these, but there's another trick. If you tighten all the ones on the lower side and back side down until they're snug, until it pulls the valve cover down, it'll actually pull that valve cover gasket up into those grooves, and then go and do the other side and pull it down snug. Then you can do the final torquing in the crisscross, but if you do it this way, it'll keep the gasket from popping out. What happens is if you do it in the crisscross, it can bind the gasket and cause the valve cover to come in because it's plastic, and it'll fold the gasket over, and then you'll have, even though you've checked everything by eye with that mirror, you'll tighten it down and still have a massive valve cover leak. And you want to make sure that if that does happen, it happens on the front or top side so you can easily see it and access it. If it happens down here or back there, you're not going to see it as well. So just make sure, you know, go ahead and tighten it down till it's snug, you know, by hand, or if you want to just set your, you know, ratchet until, you know, just be sure you do not tighten it down past, you know, I would say 70% of the torque value, that's final torque.